There were chains around us. By your grace we are no longer bound. No longer bound. You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Oh, 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 oh. Feel the darkness shaking. All the dead are coming back to life. Back to life. Hear the sun awaken. All creation singing, we're alive. 'Cause you're alive. You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Sing it with us. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Go! And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens me. Awakens, awakens. One more time, here we go. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens. Sing it with us, here we go. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Oh, 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 oh.
All right, awesome. Small but mighty group, let's keep it going. You guys know this one.
He whispers in my ear, tells me that I'm fearless. He shares a melody and tells me to repeat it. Oh, it makes me whole. It reminds my soul I am all He says I am. I am all He says I am.
that you're here to worship with us today. And as we're preparing for the next part of our service where we can take some time to pray and to have some peaceful time, I just have to lift up Ian and Tyler in the balcony. Seeing two young men up there helping to lead worship today just filled my heart with so much gladness, and I just had to acknowledge it. So thank you, boys, for being here this morning and for being a part of our team.
I'm so confused. I know I heard you loud and clear, and I'll follow through. Somehow I ended up here.
I don't wanna think I may never understand that my broken heart is a part of your plan. When I try to pray, all I've got is hurt and these 4 words.
Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done.
We sit here on graduation Sunday thinking about the future. We're thinking about cookouts. We're thinking about what's going to happen next. Oftentimes when we get in this mode of thinking of what happens next, we forget to just sit in the moment. We forget to sit in the moment and listen to what God has to say to us right here, right now. The future will be there. It's going to come. Don't miss what's happening right now. So as we continue to sing this, I invite you to just push all of that future off to the future. Sit here right now and hear what God has to say to you. I know you're good, but this don't feel good right now. And I know you think of things I could never think about.
Sometimes I'm counting on joy, distracted by the noise, just trying to make sense of all your promises. Sometimes I gotta stop, remember that you're God and I am not. So thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Like a child on my knees, all that comes to me
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, here we are. We're sitting here before you, and we are present. And we are opening our hearts to be filled with your Spirit this morning. Let us take more time to be still so that you can move in our lives. It's so easy to want to look ahead and to worry about what's coming next. But we'll leave that in your hands. So, in this moment, I invite you to just lift up your silent prayer to God right now. Just take the time to do that. And now, let us join together in the prayer that your Son taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Well, good morning. My name is Shane Russo. I'm the Connections Coordinator here at Girard First UMC. If you have any questions about anything, you need to know anything, where to go, whatever, let me know, talk to me, and I can either give you an answer or show you somebody who can. And we have a few announcements, so enjoy those. Your offerings continue to have an impact on the people and ministry of this church. Here's just another example of how your offerings are touching lives. You can text to give or give online by going to ifiregirard.com and clicking on Give. Or you can drop your offering and your Connect card in the metal kiosk on the way out. For anyone interested in playing a round or two of golf, GUMC and the Mahoning Country Club have you covered. On the first and third Sundays of the month, join me and Phil Fisher for some friendly action out on the course. Or you could just come and watch me make a fool of myself. Either way, we'll love to see you there. Like to read and want to make a lasting impact on someone's life? Consider joining our Hero Reading Team. We are partnering with the United Way and Prospect Elementary to help the youth in Girard improve their reading skills by offering tutoring starting in the fall. For more information, contact Sarah Korb or let us know on your Connect card. July 21st is our Mad Camp performance. You can show your support by inviting friends and family to see an awesome show. Mad Camp encompasses everything Girard UMC stands for, so what better way to show a new person what we're all about than by bringing them to Mad Camp? Don't forget to follow iFire Girard on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay connected throughout the week, and on YouTube to see all of our videos, including this one.
Hi, Mommy.
Well, it's great to have you here today. I'm Pastor Vicki. You honor us with your presence, and hopefully we will honor your time for being here. If you think that it's a little bit sparse today, it's graduation Sunday, so we honored all of our graduates in the first service, and so a lot of our families were in that service as well. So if it's a little less than normal, that would be why. Today we are going to finish off our series on lies we believe about God. And we're probably going to end with one of the more controversial ones. So hold on with me all the way through. Don't check out anywhere in the middle, because I think that we're going to get to a good place, but we might have to disrupt a few things before we get there, okay? So just can you make that commitment with me that we're going to hold on all the way through, okay? Today we're going to challenge some of our deeply held assumptions, and I think we're going to be better off for it. The lie that we're going to start with that we believe about God is that God is a Christian. That God is a Christian. Interesting, right? Well, the title Christian actually started out as a derogatory term. that after Jesus was on earth, he had his ministry, he got his followers together, people began to notice that they lived differently. They were kind of weird. Let's just say not creepy, just weird. And so what they noticed was that when they had enemies, they prayed for them rather than gossiped about them or did passive-aggressive things to try to get back at him, or maybe did just aggressive things to get back at him. They prayed for their enemies, that when they were forced to carry someone's bag or armor or whatever it was for a mile, they went 2 miles. They're like, there's just something different about these folks. And they began to ask them, why are you different? Well, because we follow the way of Christ. We follow what Christ taught us. And so they began to call them little Christs or Christians. So that name began as a derogatory term, but we've turned it into a badge of honor, saying we are people who follow Christ. Well, since then, Christianity's not turned into a way, it's turned into a religion. And there's just one problem with that religion tends to divide. It tends to separate out people. Now, it's good in that we learn practices that help us come closer to God, that we learn to have a community that we get to be a part of. I mean, there's all parts of that are good, but unfortunately, religion tends to divide people into insiders and outsiders. And what do we assume? Well, the insiders are going to be okay, and the outsiders aren't. And of course, we're on the inside, so we're in that category of people that are tight with God, right? We're okay. Well, I think that probably wasn't what Jesus' intention was, because as we suppose there are people on the outside, but we're on the inside, Jesus didn't divide the world up that way. Jesus divided the world up into people who saw and people who didn't yet see. People whose eyes were opened, people whose eyes needed to be opened. He divided people into those who trust and those who don't yet trust. Not insiders and outsiders. Let's talk about who did divide people up into insiders and outsiders. Revelation 12:10 says this. Then I heard a loud voice in the heavens say, now have come the salvation, the power, and the kingdom of our God, and authority of his Messiah. Listen to this part. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. He's talking about the enemy of our soul. Some people would call that Satan. Okay? The word accuser there, kategoro in Greek. What does that sound like? Category? It's where we get our word category from. Who is the person who's dividing people into categories? The accuser of our soul. The one who's trying to do us harm. The one who's trying to divide. The one that seeks to kill and destroy. Not the one who came to give life. Satan is the accuser, putting people into categories. Now, sometimes it's good to have categories. I want to know if that plant is poisonous. And there's got to be somebody that's put that in a category that says this plant is poisonous, it's called poison ivy, and this is what it looks like. And I'm really happy they've done that. All of us are happy that they've done that, that we understand there's a category of poisonous plant. The problem is that when we start doing that with people, we start evaluating people, we start valuing people differently. That if you're in my category, you're more valuable than people who aren't. Now, if we lived in a cave, this wouldn't be a problem, but we don't, do we? We live in community. Now, this is a pretty monolithic community. I've been here about 3 years. I'm getting used to it. I've had to learn a thing or two. For one thing, everybody around here loves to hug and kiss each other, which is really good. I'm all got, especially the good-looking ones. I'm down with that. That's fine with me. I just want a little warning when it's coming. That's all. You know, I just want to know that it's coming. I told you that I've resurrected the Thanksgiving kiss, which is you act like you're going in to kiss them on the lips, and you turn your neck at just right at the time until they get your cheek, right? And we invented this with Aunt Ella, who was bound and determined to kiss every person on the lips, and I'm like, no, you're not. And so I've resurrected that now that I live here in this area because that's apparently what we do now. I'm okay, that's good, but it's kind of a nice little bubble to be in, a nice little world to live in. But the problem is that this world is not going to be self-contained. That we're going to come across people who live differently than we do, who believe differently than we do, who are just trying to travel the path, but they have a different category than we do. A couple weeks ago, I did a vlog, I guess you'd call it, and I called it Christians Ruin Everything. And for all the 5 people of you who watched it, I'm going to let the rest of you in on what we talked about. We talked about how sometimes when you put the category Christian in front of something, it doesn't make it better. In fact, it makes it worse. What happened was this. This is just more information you want to know, but I consider myself to be a libertarian. If you don't know what that is, that's all right. I'll just give you the quick version of it. A libertarian holds as their highest principle that what we call the non-aggression principle. And it says this: we will not initiate force on any person, whether it be religiously, politically, economically, financially, spiritually. We will not initiate force against someone. We also expect that you will not initiate force against us. We do believe in self-defense. But as a result of that, what comes from that non-aggression principle is that we believe and respect every single individual. We believe in a basic respect for every individual because I'm not going to enforce my values and beliefs on you, and I expect that you won't force that onto me. Well, I like to live that way. It influences my theology, it influences a lot of what I do. So, as a result, on my Facebook page, I have a lot of different pages that come onto my news feed, and one of them was Christian Libertarian. And I had them on my Facebook feed until about 2 weeks ago when this happened. They put a meme, which is just a picture with words on it, onto my Facebook page that said this. Well, I'm not going to bother telling you what it said. Let me tell you what it did. It basically made fun of a transgendered person. Now, it wasn't the point of it to make fun of a transgendered person, but in a roundabout way, that's what it did. And I can understand that people don't get why they don't. If you're not confused about that, you don't understand how someone else can be confused about that until one day you're confused about something that other people don't seem to be confused about, and then maybe you can start to understand. But I put on the caption, I said, this is not helpful. You do realize that there's no secular libertarian who would ever make fun of a category of person, who would ever dehumanize someone by making fun of a category of person, because we respect every single individual regardless of how they identify themselves. Now, I don't know if they took it down or what, because nobody responded to it except the moderator, who said, oh, I can kind of understand what you mean. I'll consider taking it down. I don't know what happened because I unfollowed them at that point, because I thought, how? When we hold as our basic principle that we will respect every single person regardless of the category that we put them in or they put themselves in, we will respect every single individual. Is it okay for us to make fun of a person because of the category they're in? Just because we put the word Christian in front of it. They felt they had the right to do that. I was angry, I was upset, and it made me wonder where we went so wrong when even a secular person who doesn't name the name of Christ, who doesn't even pretend to follow in his way, would never do something like that and would look more like Christ than we did. You see, we want to have our categories because inevitably what comes is that we value those inside more than those who are outside. When someone asks me if I'm a Christian, I have to think to myself, if you mean a person who's following the way of Christ and that hopes today to look more like Jesus than I did yesterday, absolutely. But if you mean somebody who thinks that it's okay to treat everybody else like they're on the outside, I can't really say that I do. Robert Capone said it this way: if the cross is a sign of anything, it's a sign that God has gone out of the religion business and solved all of the world's problems without requiring a single human being to do a single religious thing. What the cross is actually a sign of is the fact that religion can't do a thing about the world's problems, that it never did work and it never will. What Jesus showed us was that humans were always more important than the category that we put them into. Always more important than the category that we put them into. He got in trouble for this all the time. Jesus, your disciples are working on the Sabbath. Jesus, you healed that man on the Sabbath. Don't you understand that you're breaking the law, you're breaking the rules by working on the Sabbath? And Jesus said, let me tell you something. The Sabbath was made for humanity. Humanity was not made for the Sabbath. And every time he came up to a religious rule that conflicted with what humanity needed, he chose to be on the side of the person that was standing in front of him, instead of the religious rule that would keep them from being healed or fed or accepted or wanted. Every single time. The next step that we go to is we think that God endorses our religion. We've turned this into a religion instead of a relationship. Then we go on to say, well, guess what? God's obviously a part of my political party too. Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian, doesn't matter. We begin to believe that God endorses our politics. The problem with that is that we begin to tell people you can't be a real Christian if. When I was growing up, I was in a church that we had a very, very small circle of who was in and who was out. You had to not only be a Christian, but you had to be a Protestant Christian. You had to not only be a Protestant Christian, but you had to be a holiness Protestant Christian who didn't drink, smoke, or chew, or go with girls who do. And you had to make sure that the real Christians went to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. The real Christians went on Wednesday night. Okay, those were the ones you knew was going to get into heaven. Everybody else, it was kind of iffy. I had a very, very small circle. Very small circle. Well, one evening at Wednesday night prayer meeting, someone gets up and said, I don't see how you can be a Democrat and a Christian. And up stands two of my favorite people in the whole world, some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, people who love Jesus, and they walked out because they were Democrats. But they didn't want to be part of a community who said they couldn't be a Democrat and a Christian. Now the pendulum is kind of swung the other way. If you look at my Facebook feed and what some of my colleagues say, they would probably say the opposite. Well, how can you be a Republican and a Christian? Because that means you don't want to this, or this, or that. And we're using our faith to beat each other up according to categories because we're so sure that God has endorsed our categories. The problem with that is not whatever party you happen to hold to. The problem is that when we begin to categorize people, we begin to be able to use people, we begin to be able to separate people, we begin to be able to divide people, and most importantly, we begin to be able to manipulate people. Let me use just one example. I have many, but I won't give them all to you today. The income tax. Now, can you imagine on any day getting everybody to go to the ballot box and say, we are going to vote to give 30% of our income in income tax? Do you think that would ever have passed on any planet? No. But do you know how it came about? It came about because the income tax was only going to tax people who made above $20,000. Guess who the only people were who made above $20,000? The 1%ers. Those people who weren't like us. And they were demonized and villainized, and who knows whether they were good people or not. It didn't matter because it flew through that we would be able to have this income tax. That was about 100 years ago. Let me ask you this question. Don't raise your hand, but how many of you make over $20,000 a year? If you have a full-time job, right? Now, that never would have passed now, but it passed when we made a category of person and manipulate people into doing things that ultimately ends up with consequences that they didn't intend. But because we can divide people and because we can separate them, we can manipulate them into doing what it is that we want, that gives us power, that gives us the ability to be different than someone else in a way that only benefits us. Now, the truth of it is that we as humans understand this world according to our box. It's just the way we are. We have days and hours and years, and we have lots of things, lots of boxes that is the structure of the way that we understand. And you know what? God uses that in order to try to communicate with us. We have to have a way of knowing what is good and what's harmful, and just we've unfortunately kind of extended that beyond its intention. But God uses that and communicates with us. If you look at the creation story, what did it say? On the first day, God did this, God created this, and there was morning and there was evening the first day, and then the second day, and the third day, and the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, and finally on the seventh day, God rested. Now, do you really think that God went by the work week? Do you really think that God went by 24 hours and said, oh, time for lunch, time for my break? Or do you think maybe he understood that we understood a work week? And he understood that we needed rest. And he understood that we could get a hold of creating on a 24-hour day. And there was morning and there was evening. When what he's trying to communicate to us is that we were the crown of his creation and that we were very good. He used our box, our structure, to communicate that to us. The problem is when we start thinking that God endorses our box and not somebody else's, and that makes us more important than they are. I always enjoy it when somebody helps me to get God out of the box that I've put him in. Sometimes you have to be careful that you don't go jump into another box. And that the people who were left in the last box were deluded, and the ones who haven't joined you in this box are idiots, or I guess I mean less intelligent. And maybe we get tempted to construct a box that keeps God out. When we do that, what we discover is that our box can be a cage. Our box becomes a cage. We can find God in our box because God will climb into any box to find us. The boxes that have been built for us have good things about them and bad things about them. And God will climb into that box in order to be with us. I loved a line from the Shack that we were reading in small group. They said, does that mean that every religion is true? And God responds and says, no. What it means is I will travel any road to find you. I will travel any road to find you, no matter what. We have been given a wonderful box. It's a box that says that the God of the universe is crazy about us, loves us unconditionally, Now, there are things that we're going to keep from that box. There are going to be things that we set aside from that box. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that there is a God who loves us, who is for us, not against us, who is on our side no matter what, that we are deeply wanted and deeply adored. We've been talking about lies we believe about God, and that's been our goal, has been to open that box up a little bit, those things that divide us from one another, and I hope we've done that with integrity. But let me give you one guideline to decide if we're on the right path or not. When you explore inside, outside the box, when you open that up and decide that maybe God's bigger than you thought, simply ask yourself this question. Is the path I'm traveling helping me to love more? Do I have a bigger capacity to love? Am I including more people? Am I accepting people better? Am I able to be in community with more people because of the journey I'm traveling? I got to tell you, I've had to set aside some of the categories that I grew up in. I don't really call myself an evangelical anymore. I certainly don't call myself a fundamentalist. Not because I don't believe some of the things I've been taught, but because it's not helpful anymore. I honestly don't call myself a Republican or a Democrat any longer, and I've spent time in both of those categories. And there are days when stupid crap comes across my Facebook feed that I'm not even sure I can keep the title Christian when it refers to a religion of people who leave people out. But I can tell you this. There has never been a day when I have not been able to keep being a follower of Christ. There has never been a day when following Christ has not called me to a greater capacity to love, to a greater ability to accept and enfold, to respect people. Every day I've been able to hold on to being a follower of the way of Jesus. We're just hoping to come one step closer. Sometimes that means stepping out of the box that's become a cage for us. It will always mean finding a greater ability to love. My challenge for you and my prayer for you is that as we walk this way together, that you'll challenge the box that you've been given. Use it as a foundation on which to stand, but not a cage in which to keep your soul contained. And that every day you'll be able to say, I look a little bit more like Jesus today than I did yesterday. And by the grace of God, he will draw us to that work one step at a time. Let's pray. God, I want to thank you for each person in this place as you've drawn each of us one step closer to you. God, I ask that you would break down the walls of the boxes that we've been given, that we've found ourselves in, the ones that have become cages. We pray that you would mow them over. But God, I do thank you that you will climb into any box, any way that we understand this world in order to reach to us. So I ask God, would you please do that work in our hearts today? Help us to look more and more like Jesus, more today than we did yesterday. And we will be forever grateful. Increase our capacity to love as we follow you wherever you lead. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
You stood before my failure and carried the cross for my shame. My sin weighed upon your shoulders, my soul now to stand. So what can I say? And what could I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you?
So I'll walk upon salvation, your spirit alive in me. This life to declare your promise, my soul now to stand. So
What can I say? And what could I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you? So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrender all. I am is
Please stand with us and sing.
yours. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrender all. I am is yours.
Just voices, lift them up.
So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrender all. I am is yours.
Last time.
So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrender all. I am is yours. All I am is yours.
We have a graduate who's with us. I wasn't sure how many would be in this service today, so we just want to take the opportunity to congratulate Vanessa